Our guest today is Rob Weisberg. Rob was a 9/11 firefighter who witnessed the horrors of that day up close and fought post-traumatic stress and survivor's guilt silently for more than 2 decades. His journey to overcome despair and find healing peace led him to the Appalachian Trail, where he reclaimed his life. Rob then wrote his memoir, From the Gray Tunnel to the Green Tunnel, which is a testament to the power of nature, community, and self-reflection in overcoming post-traumatic stress and finding hope and the resilience to take his next steps forward. Rob Weisberg, welcome to Next Steps Forward.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
No, it's a pleasure and honor to have you here. And as you know, we do a lot of conversations on 9/11 and mental health. And so I appreciate you being here, your time, and sharing your journey with us. And Rob, before we talk about the details of 9/11, would you share your upbringing with us? Were you a New York City kid?
No, I'm actually I'm from Long Island originally, and still. I grew up in Comac, which is like halfway out on Long Island, and typical suburban upbringing. Grew up playing baseball, soccer, and scouts, and I was involved with scouting all the way up until the time I graduated high school.
And so for those who aren't in the tri-state area, can you tell us your sports allegiance? And then I'll explain that.
Yeah, so let's see. Hockey is the Rangers. Football is the Giants, and basketball is the Knicks.
So it's a little unusual because typically in the island, you're an Islanders, Mets, and Jets fan.
Yeah, it's funny. I grew up as a Met fan with my dad. With his friends, I'd go to breakfast, and a lot of times there was somebody from the Mets there: Ed Kranepool, Art Shamsky, Buddy Harrelson. But my wife is a huge Yankee fan, so if I ever wanted to watch baseball, I had to make the switch.
Happy wife, happy life.
Exactly.
You learned at a young age. Good for you. It took me 20 years to figure that one out. So, Rob, sometimes a job isn't what we think it's going to be once we get into it. You mentioned you're from Comac. You are with the Comac Fire Department in Comac,
Right.
New York.
Still there, yep.
What drew you to being a firefighter?
Yeah, so like I said, growing up through Scouts, I am an Eagle Scout. And from that experience, I really learned a lot about community service and trying to just give back. So after going to school and graduated from college, I moved back to New York. I went to University of Denver. And when I came home, I was like, all right, I got to find a job and get my career going. But I also had to find a way to give back to the community. So the fire department was always something that I was interested in, even as a little kid. You do the Halloween thing where you have your raincoat and a hat and boots. So I did all that. And then there was the opportunity to actually pursue it further. And I said, let me go do it.
That's amazing. I love that. And what did being a firefighter mean to you before you started the job and then once you were in it?
Yeah, so talk about a way to give back to the community. People don't call the fire department when things are going great. They're at a very bad time in their life at that moment, and they need help. And if there was something that I or my brother and sister firefighters could do to help them at their worst time, then that's fantastic. I can't think of a better way to give back to my community.
So you'd recommend it to anybody out there thinking about it?
I do. And I want people to understand, on Long Island, it's all volunteer. So there are so many different roles that you can take on to help. Okay. If you're not comfortable going into a burning building or heights or something like that, there are other jobs that need to get done at a fire scene, keeping the traffic shut down, anything like that, that can still help the other guys and women and keep them safe. You're adding something to the team.
And have your feelings changed at all? Have they deepened over your time there?
Yeah. Uh, what I can tell you is you do see things that the typical person doesn't see. Um, Sometimes it's really not pretty. Sometimes it sticks with you. And I don't know anybody that's gone into being a first responder, whether it was fire, EMS, police, anything like that, that is the same person before they went in.
Do you mind if we talk about that a little bit? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
So I finished my doctorate about a year and a half ago, and it was focused on the barriers for police officers seeking mental health treatment, very similar for any first responder, obviously.
Mhm.
And to your point, you see things that most people don't see or want to see.
Right.
And everybody has a bad day,
Hmm.
but police and fire and EMS in particular see everybody's bad day every day.
Every day.
I had a police officer say that one time when I was interviewing him.
Hmm.
And it's something that I never thought about until he said that. And, how do you deal and cope with that? You think about, and almost every police officer interviewed for my dissertation said the same thing, is that 20, 30 years ago, an incident would happen, whatever that incident was. After work, they go to the bar, you do a beer and a shot, and you talk about it there, you walk out the bar, and that's it.
Yeah. Um, Unfortunately, in the volunteer world, it's very similar. Okay. Um, when I first started, the attitude was very suck it up, don't talk about it. Um, if it gets to you, you're weak. And so that was the culture. Okay. Suppress it, don't deal with it, and get ready for the next call. Go home, do whatever you got to do. But that's it. That there was nothing afterwards to deal with something. So it made it you know it made for challenging times because you may still be thinking about a bad situation, and here's another bad situation on top of it right after. It's that's not impossible to happen.
And so it's still like that today.
It's I would say the attitude has changed. Okay, I we do have with Suffolk County, where my department is part of, a critical incident stress management team, which I am now a part of, and we get notified from the local agency, whether it's a fire department, an ambulance squad. Hey, our guys had a bad call. Can you guys come in and do a debriefing with them, help them talk things through, and give them some direction going forward? Like I said, when I first started, that really wasn't around or available.
But like you said a few minutes ago, when you come into the job for a career, you're not the same person when you come out 20, 25, 30 years later.
Hmm.
And you said you see an experience, and the next day you see and have another one.
Yeah.
What does that do to an individual day in, day out over 20, 25, 30 years? I can't begin to think about that.
It can be a real grind, um, because it does get to you, whether the guys or the women will admit it or not. Um, it does. I mean, how do you deal with a situation where um, you were dealing with a bad situation involving a child? Okay. Um, we'd go on calls, where it's an elderly person. Okay. They lived their life. Okay. And we know as you get older, you know, um, the elderly tend to fall more, so you're there dealing with I hate to say it, but the normal part of living. Okay. But a child in a car accident where they didn't really have a chance to really start living yet, um, how can you just walk away from that and not be changed?
One of the police officers I interviewed talked about something very similar. A 6-year-old girl, I forget her cause of death, but he was there just to take pictures of her.
Hmm.
And he started to take a couple of pictures and just started bawling, and he didn't
Yep.
know why.
Yeah.
And I just cannot begin to fathom the toll it takes on an individual day in, day out, year in, year out. And we take that for granted. We see, there's doing a lot of construction down the street. They're putting a laying new sewer on a main road for me. Well, we
Hmm.
see the police officers there just conducting traffic because it's 2 lanes down to one.
Right.
That's what we see. What we don't see, to your point, a buddy of mine became a police officer a couple of years ago. His first week on the job got called out, and somebody committed suicide and hung themselves from a tree.
Yep.
And he couldn't take the person down because he had to wait for the coroner to show up.
Hmm.
or the medical examiner. I forget which one,
Yeah, yeah,
but it's like that's day 3 on the job, and that's what he's seeing.
yeah.
And so I just want our listeners and viewers to understand that it's not firefighters going to save the kitten from the tree.
Right.
It's pulling somebody out from a burning building, and maybe they make it, maybe they don't. Maybe they're half scarred.
Yeah.
They lose a loved one in there. And so I just wanted to give credit where credit's due to first responders, because we take you guys for granted. And so thank you for your service and your sacrifice. And it also takes a toll on your family, not just you.
Absolutely. Especially when things like the PTSD start really kicking in. And I try and explain to people with PTSD, about PTSD. Again, I have it. I don't hide it anymore. I hid it for over 20 years. Um, PTSD can come about 2 ways. One way is one significant traumatic event. Okay. But the second way, which people don't really realize, is it could just be cumulative. Okay. You see bad thing after bad thing after bad thing. And that's why we have that expression, the straw that broke the camel's back. You had that one last thing where your body said, your mind said, I'm done. I can't be looking at this. I can't be doing this anymore. Um, and then when the PTSD starts kicking in, okay, um, yeah, the impact on family. Oh my God, and they don't understand it. Okay, and if you're still in the suck it up phase, okay, and you don't want to share it with your family, then all of a sudden it's like, why is this person acting like that? You know, um, yeah, it's not good.
People don't think about anger, rage, potential physical abuse,
Right.
alcohol and drug abuse,
Yep.
excuse me, things like that take the toll on the individual, but the broader extent to the family and friends. And so
Right.
it just people just don't think about that. So let's go back for a moment to a defining day, and
Mhm.
perhaps the defining day so far in your life.
Yeah.
And of course, that day is September 11th, 2001, 9/11.
Hmm.
You were a firefighter at Ground Zero on that day,
Yep.
but you were not a New York City firefighter. We know
Right.
you're in Comac.
Yep.
You're commuting to your job as a financial controller when the first plane hit the North Tower of the World Trade Center.
Right.
Tell us how you jumped into action despite not being a New York City firefighter, and what prompted you to do so.
Yeah. So I was commuting to my job. So I was actually underneath the towers, because the subways ran underneath the towers. I was underneath the towers when the first plane hit. Uh, the subway had already let out. So we're on the platforms trying to get out, okay, the whole complex. And the shock wave of that first explosion blew all these people down the stairs in front of me. I'm like, what was that? And my initial reaction was it was a car bomb. And when I got to the street, I still didn't know it was a plane. I just knew that there was some sort of explosion very high up. And then I started hearing it was a plane and things like that. So, as a firefighter, you're always curious. You're always thinking. You're always doing size up, doing the what ifs, And I can't tell you how many times I would look at the towers and say, okay, each one's 110 stories. You figure even if there was 100 people per floor, how many people could potentially be in the building or both buildings. And, when I saw this, my initial reaction was they don't have enough guys for this. So I went to my office. I checked in with them. I said, listen, I don't know what's going on with this, but um, I can tell you right now they don't have enough guys. So I'm going to go across the street to 10 House, which is
Mm-hmm.
on Liberty Street, which is the southern border of the World Trade Center complex, and see if they can use me. If not, I'll come back. And they all were very supportive. My management team was very supportive of my request, and they said, yeah, go, you do what you got to do. So I got to 10 House, and the 10 engine, 10 truck, they were already out. But the captain to 10 truck was still in quarters. So I introduced myself and I said, if you can use me, great. If not, I'll get out of your way because I'm a totally unknown to him. I'm not FDNY. I'm just somebody who showed up saying, hey, if you can use me, great. And he said, Rob, you're all I got. He goes, I need you to set up a triage for the people in the firehouse that are there already. as well as all the people that kept coming in after I got there. And so that was my assignment. So I spent the next couple of minutes just running through the firehouse. It was, the main floor plus two additional floors. I got to the second floor and I just saw the weight room and said, no, there's nothing here that I can use. And I got to the top floor, and that was the bunk room was there. And I started grabbing sheets and blankets and pillows and stuff like that and bringing it down to the truck room where all the people were, and started laying things out so people could lay down. There were some chairs, so if people, if they hurt their arm, they didn't need to lay down; they could sit in a chair, right? And just started to provide whatever care I could with the limited resources available to me. Because when I asked the captain, "Where are your medical supplies?" he pointed at this gray cabinet against the wall, and there really wasn't a lot there because that house didn't really run EMS. So they had very limited supplies. I remember I could only find 4 pairs of rubber gloves. And when I went from person to person, ideally I would always have a fresh pair of gloves because you don't want to contaminate, all these people from the person before them. And so that really wasn't an option. And, so I did the best I could with the resources available at that time.
You just gave a very clear sort of, I'll say, reenactment of that day from what you were doing. What do you remember most vividly about that day, and what stayed with you emotionally, and has that changed over time?
Yeah. So a lot a lot of other things happened while I was doing this. Okay, it's hard to cram it all in right now, um, but what I can tell you is, yes, we did have an ambulance come over. Brian Smith and Brian Gordon, their shift had just ended in Brooklyn. They dropped off their rig and grabbed a spare one and came over on their own. And so now it was the three of us working together. And one of the things I'll never forget was, well, first of all, we had the second plane fly right over us, and you could hear the plane accelerating and hitting the second tower. Okay, that wasn't much later, much after the initial plane. Okay, so that shows you just roughly how quickly I made it from underneath the towers to my office across the street and started working. It was all very quick. Okay, so there was that, and hearing the captain say, guys, keep your head on a swivel. We're being attacked. This is not an accident. Okay. Um, then hearing the people in front of the firehouse who didn't want to come into the firehouse, um, hearing them screaming, they're jumping. Okay. And I remember working, and then I started going towards the front of the firehouse and saying to myself, Rob, stop. You don't need to see it, because when they hit the ground, there's nothing I can do for them. And I don't need that image in my head. Okay, so I don't think it was being selfish. I think it was being smart. Okay, and I went back to doing my work. But then when they all started screaming, "It's coming down," and I said to them, "The plane," and they said, "No, the tower." Okay, um, that's definitely something I'll never forget, because in the fire department we have something called the collapse zone, and that's, you take the building, you go 1.5 times the height of the building, and then you kind of do like a radius around that and say anywhere in that area is bad. So now we're talking about 1,000 foot building, so times 1.5. Now we're talking 1,500 feet, and you draw that radius. We are right in the collapse zone. Okay, and I remember running towards the back of the firehouse with a lot of people, and I'm like, this really isn't going to make much of a difference, you know. But then everything went black, and I also got thrown off my feet because they estimate that the wind where we were at that time was about 140 miles an hour. I remember suffocating with all the dust. So there was a lot of that I remember. But one of the things that really, really carried with me for a long time was the fact that we did have one person get killed in the firehouse. And for over 20 years, I blamed myself for that. And I kept second guessing myself. What could I have done differently? You know, what is it that I missed? You know, um, and that just ate at me. And it wasn't until finally getting to therapy in June of 22 that was something that we were able to talk about as one of our topics of things that Rob needs to fix. Okay. Um, that I was able to let go of that self blame. Okay. Took me a long time to accept the fact that I didn't create the situation. Okay. And I did everything to the best of my ability. And the situation was unprecedented. Okay. Um, there was, I, there was never any training for this. Okay. And throughout the course of that whole day, if things don't work, plan A doesn't work, you go to plan B, right? We were at like plan KZ, we were like so far down, so many different plans because it was so dynamic that day. And looking back, the fact that we only lost one person in the firehouse, looking back now, it's like, wow, we did pretty good. And I don't want it to sound callous towards the person that we lost because that death was a tragedy, but it could have been worse.
Did that person sustain injuries from the initial plane attack or from when the tower collapsed?
From the collapse. Yeah.
There's nothing you could have done.
No. um it took me a long time to come to that realization. um you know uh yeah, it it, it was like I said, it was something that ate at me for over 20 years, and then to finally get to the point where it's like it was almost like a relief when that realization finally kicked in, because it's easy to beat yourself up. It's hard to give yourself forgiveness. You know?
No, I understand that. So I appreciate you sharing that with us, Rob. I know it's not easy. Was there a moment on that day when you realized that 9/11 had changed not just the city, not just the nation, but also you personally? Or was that realization something that only happened later on?
Um. Okay. So the following day is when I realized that I had PTSD. It didn't take long. All right. Um. During all of that, it was very stay focused, keep working. There's so much to do. But then later that late afternoon, early evening, I was finally able to connect with a buddy of mine and start thinking about me for a while because I was exhausted. Again, this all started in the morning. Um, so no breakfast, no lunch. You know, it was just it, it was time to start thinking about me for a little bit. And I was able to connect with a buddy of mine. I ended up on a fishing boat. He took me to New Jersey where he lived. He didn't go into work that day. And my buddy Frank Veterosa. And finally, we were able to meet up. The fishing boat, he said, "Where do you need to go?" I said, "I need to get to New Jersey." He brings me to New Jersey. And I asked people, "Where am I?" They said, "Jersey City." I'm like, I should have said I need to go to Hoboken. Okay. So it took my buddy a while to find me because all the cops were relocated and reassigned and covering areas that they don't normally cover. And so he'd find the cops and say, "Hey, I'm looking for this intersection." And they're like, "I don't know. This isn't my normal sector." But he found me. We got back to his apartment. And the following morning, um, we're sitting in his living room. And across the way from his building was a construction site. And they were cleaning up this lot and dropping debris into this empty dumpster. And when that stuff hit the dumpster, the echo was loud. And I jumped up off the couch. And my buddy, Frank's like, dude, little jumpy. And if I tell you, he could have scraped me off the ceiling. It was very noticeable. And we laughed it off. But in my head, right after that, I was already thinking, this isn't good. Something is not good.
What was your role in the aftermath of that day, and how long did you remain at ground zero?
Yeah. So I got home and about so that was September 11th. Obviously, I got home the following day, and then trying to figure out work and how we were going to do all that. And for my job, I was part of the skeleton crew to get everything kind of up and running again. And there was a friend of mine, Stacy Simonelli, who was on that crew with us, and she was telling me how she got involved down at Ground Zero, supporting the rescue effort, and and I said, "Oh, how do I do that?" So middle of October, I am now involved with supporting the effort, and I was doing that every week. I had a weekly shift, and then around Thanksgiving, they decided they were going to start cutting back on volunteers and making it all uh, streamlined as far as volunteers and teams. So I remember one night um, I had to go see the Red Cross to get some supplies. And we interacted a lot in the past. So when I got what I needed, they said, okay, we'll see you next time. And I said, actually, no, because our crew is one of the crews that got cut. So they were like, are you serious? I said, yeah. And they were like, well, if you want to keep working, we've seen you work. So join us. You're part of our team now. So I switched teams and I kept working down there once a week until the end of May 2002. So overall, I was down there for about 9 months involved with all that.
I can't believe this, but it's been more than 24 years since that day.
Hmm.
And it's hard to believe, but one third of Americans were born after 9/11 or were
Yep.
too young to remember that day. So
Hmm.
millions of Americans may not know about the aftermath of ground zero.
Right.
Not only are you a witness to and a participant in history, but these days you're a teacher of that history.
Yep.
How did the country feel in the days and weeks after the attacks? How did people treat each other? And was there any single event or a moment that personally captured that feeling for you?
Yeah. So the following day, there were two situations that I personally will never forget. Okay, and they were both direct. They were directed to me. Like I said, I ended up in Hoboken, and I needed to come. The Long Island Railroad opened up, so I needed to get back to Manhattan, and then from Manhattan onto Long Island. So my buddy Frank dropped me off at the Path train, and I took it's like a subway that connects New Jersey to New York City. So I'm standing there on the train, holding onto one of the straps, and meanwhile by my feet there's gear, and I still have the same clothes from the day before, so everybody could see I'm covered in dust. They see the gear, and it's easy to figure out my story. So these two elderly women, late 70s, early 80s, I guess, both get up and say, please take our seat. And I'm like, no, no, I'm good. And they're like, no, you're taking our seat, basically. So I always think about, from their perspective, they must have been I'm wondering, how bad do I look that these two elderly women are saying, you need our seat more than we do? Okay. So there was that. But then I finally get onto the train, the Long Island Railroad to get back onto Long Island. And I'm sitting in an aisle seat, and then the next part of the aisle, across from me, there's a husband and wife. They're commuting home. They each have an individual pizza. They're going to have their dinner together as they commute home. And the wife reaches across, taps me on the shoulder, and everything, says, "Here, please take my pizza." And I'm like, "No, no, it's okay. And she was like, "No, no, I really want you to have it." So I accepted it, and I had some dinner on my way home, and the two of them shared the other pizza. And like I said, I didn't ask for it, obviously. Um, this was just these were just people, whether it's on the PATH train or on the Long Island Railroad, that were like, we don't know what else to do, but if this helps somebody that helped, well, then they felt they were doing their part, and it was a great gesture. Okay, and like you said, this is 24 years ago, and I'll never forget those two moments.
Those are great stories. Thank you for sharing those. Let's talk about your post-traumatic stress
Hmm.
and the Appalachian Trail.
Yep.
Two things I just wouldn't imagine in the same sentence.
Yeah.
When did you come up with the idea of hiking the Appalachian Trail? And then how long did it take between first thinking of the idea and starting on your journey?
Yeah. So, in 22, okay, 2022, um, I was really hitting rock bottom. Okay. Rock bottom meaning I had my suicide planned out. I just had to do it, and I would have been totally fine with that. Um, but like you had mentioned, there are a lot of people out there born after that day. Both my boys are post 9/11 kids. They didn't know me before. They just knew me as after, okay, that day. And because of them, I had to stay in the fight, okay? And like I said earlier, scouting has been a big part of my life. I got my kids into scouting. They went through the whole process. They're both Eagle Scouts. I'm an Eagle Scout. And they're both in college now, okay? But I'm still involved with our scout troop, okay? I'm actually the scoutmaster for my troop, Troop 349 in Smithtown. And I love the program. I love what it offers. And what part of what it offers is that opportunity to be out in the woods. And camping has become such a passion for me over the years that when I'm out with my friends, doing something outdoors, they always say the same thing. They're like, "Rob, we never see that smile anywhere else." So um, I had known about the Appalachian Trail since I was a kid, and basically, I said to my wife, "I need to go away." Okay, I'm in a really bad place. She knew I was in a bad place. Um, I would, just being home, go out for a couple hours, and I'd feel good for a little bit, but it wasn't sustainable. Going out for a few hours and then saying, "Oh, that couple of hours is going to fix everything." It was a temporary fix. Like I said, thank God I didn't turn to alcohol. Okay, but it's a temporary fix. But um, for me, it was being outside, and so I said to her, I need to go away. I need to do something long, and I need to do this." And so I spent about a year planning, researching, and coming up with a way to pull this all together to get it done.
And why the Appalachian Trail? Just because you'd read about it, you'd learned about it, it was
I learned
close.
about Yeah, I learned about it. I knew it was hard. I knew I was going to get my butt kicked a bit or a lot. Okay, um, but I just needed to be away from everything. Okay, Um, I had so much in my head that needed to be processed. Um, it, it for me that was where I needed to be. In fact, and just to share, I mean, I'm still in therapy now. Okay, I started therapy once I hit rock bottom. So I started therapy in June of 22. Okay. Um, in fact, what happened was I'm in the World Trade Center Health Monitoring Program, and I went for my annual review, and the medical side was okay, and then there was a psychological aspect of it. And when we were finished, the red flags, the alarms, everything's going off. They're scrambling on their end. They're like, all right, Rob can't go home. Okay, we got to connect him now. They couldn't get in touch with the person that they were looking for. So then they started, Rob, do you promise you're not going to hurt yourself? If if you think you can't keep that promise, do you have somebody you can reach out to? All this sort of stuff. Okay. And, like I said, it was rock bottom, and I definitely needed something more than just a weekend. So um, I was gone for almost 6 months hiking. Okay. The Appalachian Trail goes from Georgia to Maine, or you can go Maine to Georgia, or you can start in the middle and do parts and switch it around, whatever works for you. So I decided I was going to start in Georgia. So I bought a one-way ticket, plane ticket to Georgia, with the idea that I was just going to walk home. you know. And like I said, I was gone for almost 6 months, and I ended up getting hurt in New Hampshire. My knees were so swollen I couldn't bend my legs anymore, and it was a tough decision to make. But I know it was the right decision because uh, I didn't want to have to be rescued. Okay, and I didn't want to put a rescuer in the situation where they had to come get me because it's dangerous for them. Okay, so I covered just over 1,850 miles. I had about another 350 miles to go. Um, but I'm fine with that. Okay, because uh, I turned my hike into something that was became very public. Okay, um, I got to the point where I was tired of hiding the PTSD, and I said I'm gonna just put it all out there, everything about it, what it's like living with it, the impact it's had on my family. So yeah, I did share a lot of very private family matters out there. Um, but I still believe that that was the right thing to do. And I'm involved with an organization called Pause a War, and they're a non for profit in Wisconsin. Okay, and I'm very involved with them because that's how I have my service dog, Chip. Okay, and if I didn't have him already, they would have given me a dog. But all the training and everything was free, and all the services they provide are free. So everything they do, all the services they provide for so many different programs is all free. It's all based on donations and things like that. So I told Pause of War I want to turn my hike into a fundraiser for them, and you know let me go away for a while, but take care of myself, but also see if I can somehow say thank you to Pause of War for everything they've done for me. Because honestly, between uh, my hike and my dog Chip, um, if it wasn't for those two parts of my life, I probably wouldn't be here anymore. I'm positive. Like I said, I had everything planned out. I just had to do it.
Where can people learn more about Pause of War?
Yeah, pauseaward.org. Um, They have a lot of different programs. They support the active military, veteran community, Gold Star families, and first responder communities. Yeah.
And what kind of dog is Chip? We've been waiting for him to come on the show so far. We were talking
Yeah.
before the
Hold
show,
on,
so I've been
he's
waiting for him.
sleeping. I think we're good. But yeah, so Chip is a treeing walker coonhound. Okay. So he is not the typical breed for this type of work. But that doesn't mean he's not a good dog. Okay. I try and tell people, um, my other dog who we had to put down recently, she was the best family dog, but Chip, he's the best dog for me. Okay. He's my buddy. We love going out and working together. Since my book came out, we are asked to come to a lot of different places to do public speaking events uh, about mental health so we can break that negative stigma. And, you know, everybody loves coming up and getting to meet Chip. Chip's the star, to be honest. They're like, yeah, there's Rob and his story and all that, but yeah, but let's go see Chip, and I'm fine with that. you know?
Sells more books, right?
Yeah, he's such a great icebreaker because people see him and they're like, oh, what this is, who's that? I'm like, oh, this is Chip, and he's my service dog, and I can explain why he's my service dog, and then I could also explain, all the great things that Paws Award does, and make people aware of the different programs, and he like I said, he's just such a great icebreaker for so many different reasons.
You should get an ink pad and stick his paw in there and have him sign the book with his paw on the inside cover. So let's get to your book.
Yeah.
Your goal with From the Gray Tunnel to the Green Tunnel, as you mentioned, was to break the stigma surrounding mental health, and especially among the first responder and military community.
Mm-hmm.
You've written about the Appalachian Trail as a kind of metaphor for the transformation.
Yeah.
Please explain to our audience what the Gray Tunnel and the tunnel references, and highlight how the ways in which your experience in the Gray Tunnel and the Green Tunnel were both different, but also similar.
Yeah. So the Great Tunnel is the day of September 11th. I try and tell people, we've all seen, whether you were born before or after, the videos of that day. And when the towers came down, all that great ash shooting down the streets of Manhattan. Okay. To me, that's the Great Tunnel. Okay. Um, Not a good place. Um, Not a good impact on my life. Okay. The Green Tunnel is the Appalachian Trail. And, it's the trees, it's the forests, it's all that. And that has been such a positive impact for me. It gave me the opportunity to clear my head, um, let certain things go. For example, another thing that I had to let go was, like I said before, my kids didn't know me before that day. Okay. They're both post 9/11 kids. And all that time with them, I've been chasing my past, trying to get back to the way I was before. And one of the things I learned while I was hiking and really came to understand and accept is the fact that I can't go backwards. Okay. Um, we are made up of all of our experiences, good and bad. Okay. And unfortunately for me, this was a huge bad experience. And I can't carve that out. Okay. Because, the result of that experience, the PTSD, all that, um, that that's who I am now. And it was such a relief to finally understand I was chasing something that was impossible to achieve. And it's okay. Let's just focus on going forward. Okay. And people are like, well, what do you exactly mean? I was like, well, say to yourself, every day you can try and jump from the ground to the moon. It's impossible. But you're out there every day, jumping, 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 and then you go to bed, and the next day you wake up and you're jumping, jumping, jumping. At some point, you got to say, "Hey, dude, it's not happening," right? And then you can move forward. So the trail during that time, I was able to have that realization, which has allowed me to move forward.
And what do you hope your readers learn about your personal transformation from your book? Is that moving forward piece? Or is there more to it as you peel back the onion?
Um, what I would really just hope that people, a couple things. Number one, the negative stigma around mental health, screw it. Okay, I don't understand this, and nobody can ever explain it to me. If you're sitting around the table and you're saying I got a heart issue, right? Everyone's saying, "Oh, dude, I got the best cardiologist. Go see this guy." No, no, my guy's the best. Go see him. Everybody does all that, but when it comes to the brain, you can't talk about it. And to me, the brain is the organ that controls everything. Okay, so if the brain doesn't work, everything else doesn't matter anymore. And that's the one organ that you can't talk about. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So there's that part. Okay, but something else I want people to understand is, or get from my book, because I was there. Don't take a permanent solution for a temporary problem. Okay, when you decide, yeah, I'm going to do it, and you do it, there's no coming back from it. Okay, and I want people to be able to see, here's a guy who is at that point. Okay, but I decided to not take that final step. Okay, if they can see, and I'm very aware, I'm very tuned into all these milestones in my life after I made that decision. Okay, my kids graduating high school, you know, different other family milestones, you know, being at a family event and saying, you know, I would have missed this. You know, um, you got to stay in the fight, and that's why when I signed my book, I signed it, "Don't quit," because you don't you don't know what you're gonna miss out on. Don't let a sucky day be your final day.
And where can our audience find your book?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. It's on Barnes and Noble. Their website. Um, Still trying to get it out there other ways. So yeah, so definitely feel free to reach out to me. I'll do whatever I can to help you get a copy. Yeah.
And you talk about not doing the permanent thing.
Hmm.
I've had a few guests on talk about themselves in that manner,
Hmm.
and one guest, he was about to hang himself,
Hmm.
and he had a couple of cats, and one cat was going around the chair, and then it happened to be on May 5th, and he starts laughing his head like, ha ha ha, we'll Cinco de Mayo. He's like, we'll call it Cinco de Hango. And then he realized it was his brother's birthday
Mm.
and didn't want to do it on his brother's birthday.
Right.
And that was it.
Yep.
And then I had the honor of having NFL Hall of Famer Charles Haley on a few years ago. And he said, just find one reason, because he had thought
Yep.
about it. He's like, just find one reason, and that's it.
Yep.
And so you've got people like yourself, like
Hmm.
Charles Haley, like this young gentleman who didn't want to do it because of his brother's birthday.
Yep.
People are talking about this just like their cardiologist.
Yep.
Um, people like you who take the stand, are open about it. We need more folks like you out there. I know you're talking about it. You're talking about your book.
Hmm.
I hope you're talking to first responders as well, because they need it.
Yeah. Like I said, I've had the opportunity to get called to a lot of different places to talk about it. My I would say, out of all the places that I've been to, civic organizations, different scouting organizations, so far the one that, for me personally, that has been Like wow, this is a group that needs it, is West Point. I had an opportunity to speak with their NCOs, and I've been invited back for the next group going through this program that they have. And it was interesting because after we were done, some people did come up to me afterwards and say, "Hey, can I talk to you? Got some questions. How should I handle this? Because these guys are the leaders." Okay. And then I got invited up for their graduation from this program, and I even they even had more questions for me. So I'm glad I followed up with them. And you know, my if I can just get the message out to one person, um, then awesome. But I'll tell you, I see the positive impact. Okay, it's it gives me that drive to keep going, to keep staying in the game myself, but also putting myself out there to keep spreading that message.
We've got about 2 minutes left. If you could leave us with one message about hope and the human spirit, what would it be?
Wow. Um, I would say kind of like what I mentioned before. You know, don't take that permanent solution for a temporary problem. Um, get the help that you deserve. Okay. Um, there's no reason to say um, nobody cares about me, because there are people. You may not see it in the moment because you're in that mindset, but there are people out there that care, and there will be people out there that will be impacted by that action.
Rob Weisberg, thank you so much for being with us today. I really appreciate your insights and your time. Thank you, sir.
Oh, my pleasure, of course.
I'm Chris Meek. We're out of time. We'll see you next week, same time, same place. Until then, stay safe and keep taking your next steps forward.